Insights Pod is brought to you by BigCommerce. BigCommerce is a leading open SaaS and composable e-commerce platform that empowers brands and retailers of all sizes to build, innovate, and grow their businesses online. BigCommerce provides its customers sophisticated enterprise-grade functionality, customization, and performance with simplicity and ease of use. Tens of thousands of B2B and B2C companies across 150 countries and numerous industries rely on BigCommerce, including United Aqua Group, Coldwater Creek, Harvey Nichols, King Arthur Baking Company, and MKM Building Supplies. For more information, please visit bigcommerce.co.uk. Thank you again to BigCommerce for their support.
Morning, Lisa.
Morning, Tom.
Well, welcome, first of all, to edition 2 of the Insights Pod. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely fine. How are you?
Oh, not so bad. But
I'm excited this time, though, Tom.
I'm excited because we're joined in the studio by a couple of guests. But first of all, what are we going to be discussing in today's pod?
Okay, so today we'll go through what's in the next Insights publication, which will be going out, due for be published at the start of May. What we have in this edition is similar to what's in the last edition in terms of the section headers. We will talk about the Economic Barometer. And Jane has joined us, Jane Blakeborough, Research Manager for BMA. We'll be chatting through that for us. We'll go through the Political Barometer, and Jonathan here from Inflect, he'll be discussing that for us. And then we'll go through the publication with our 3 top headers. So we'll go through 2 briefings on reducing the environmental impact, 2 on raising standards, and 2 on understanding and growing the market, which are our key sort of themes within the BMA.
So, as with every edition of the podcast, we're doing a roundup of BMA activity over the last 3 months. So let's kick off with reducing environmental impact. And January the 8th, I attended a roundtable discussing enabling water-smart communities. This was a project by Public First and the University of Manchester. The research explores the economic case for water-smart housing and social perspectives around water scarcity and reuse in homes.
And then on January the 13th, Tom, you wrote a feature for KBB Review magazine, urging retailers to champion products that address water scarcity and antimicrobial resistance.
On January the 16th, we wrote to DEFRA, Water Regs UK and Waterwise to examine recirculating showers, highlighting that manufacturers require greater legal clarity and certainty to invest confidently in scaling these products in the UK market. And we've made great progress since.
Yep. On January the 28th, following a flurry of ministerial lobbying requesting the government rethink its government-led approach to mandatory water labelling, the ministers in their response have remained steadfast in their current thinking.
On February the 12th, we hosted a meeting with experts from MHCLG, DEFRA, the Future Homes Hub, Water Regs UK and Waterwise to take forward that issue around recirculating showers and discuss the next steps.
Tom, you were at another Enabling Water Smart Communities workshop, this time to understand the shifts required in professional practices for water smart communities to become more common.
On February the 25th, I took part in a discussion at KBIS, the show in Las Vegas, to share how the Windsor Declaration has united global kitchen and bath manufacturers, trade associations and certification bodies to address the combined issues of water scarcity and antimicrobial resistance.
And then on March the 19th, the BMA wrote to Her Majesty's Treasury to highlight that DEFRA is pressing ahead with the what we believe is an unnecessary £20 million mandatory water efficiency label initiative.
So moving on to raising standards, on January the 10th, the BMA wrote to Lee Pincher, MP, to request a meeting to discuss sustainable water supply within housing and infrastructure development.
And then on January 24, BMA responds to the Unified Water Label Technical Review, examining their existing criteria for taps and showers.
On February the 3rd, we published Creating the Optimum Public Bathroom, a roadmap for designing and maintaining public bathrooms, which was a labour of love for yourself, Lisa.
Yes, it was. Many, many months of work. Hope members read it. Contact me if you need more information about that, by the way. And on February the 10th, our technical director, Andy McLean, he hosted an Insights Bites webinar discussing the Drinking Water Directive. He was looking specifically around the materials and contact with drinking water, and then the testing and approval processes.
On the February the 19th, we held our inaugural Insights Live event at the Nottingham Belfry, which provided a complete update on issues affecting members from both a technical and marketing perspective.
And then on February 24th, Andy McLean was out and about again, attending a SEN workshop in Brussels, and that was to understand the development of complementary product category rules under the CPR and gain more clarity on the digital product passport developments.
On February the 27th, it was a really big day for the BMA. We received the Trade Association of the Year award at the Trade Association Forum Awards in London.
Such celebrations. And then March the 3rd, a BMA put a request in to take part in a health and safety executive research project to understand how the approved documents for building regs are being used and how they could be improved.
On March 25th, a Westminster Hall debate, which is the second chamber in Parliament, took place on construction standards for new build homes. The BMA submitted a briefing on water efficiency before the session.
And then on March 26th, Tom, you attended a roundtable hosted by NetMag Media on solutions for water and energy saving in commercial developments.
And our third and final section, which is understanding and growing the market. On January the 2nd, the BMA received a really disappointing response from HMT Outline, which responded to our concerns about business property relief from inheritance tax and the impact that will have on family businesses within our membership.
And then on January the 16th, BMA announces new research looking into the best practices for managing bathroom product displays in showrooms.
On January the 23rd, the BMA released members' turnover statistics from December the 24th, which showed a downturn last year, but are happy to report a slight upturn in more recent reports.
Yep. And on January the 29th, the BMA welcomed the growth measures outlined by Chancellor Rachel Reeves's speech at Siemens Health Engineers in Oxfordshire.
On February the 14th, the BMA published a paper examining our sector's position regarding equality, diversity and inclusion, or EDI. It looked at gaps, progress and actions to take.
And then on February the 19th, at the BMA's Insights Live event, a showroom and independent retailer session examined what retailers want from their suppliers and how to improve their partnerships. I believe that was really well accepted.
On February the 25th, we hosted the UK Pavilion at the Kitchen and Bathroom Industry Show, or KBIS, which is North America's largest trade show dedicated to all kitchen and bathroom design aspects.
And on March 18th, Tom, you were speaking at the Value of Water conference at ISH 2025. You discussed the nexus between water scarcity and antimicrobial resistance, including, obviously, the Windsor Declaration.
And on the 31st of March, I had an article published in KBB Focus outlining that 2025 offers optimism for the UK bathroom manufacturing sector, despite some unstable international geopolitics and potential headwinds.
Yep, and that rounds up our BMA activity for this last few months.
We've been rather busy, haven't we?
Yeah, we always are. Yeah.
So let's get right into it and go to Jane and ask about the Economic Barometer. First of all, Jane, what is this Economic Barometer that we just introduced in the last edition of Insights and is now a regular feature?
Yeah, so it's like a dashboard, really, and we wanted to be able to show a series of economic indicators that will help the manufacturers understand sort of where the market is now, where it's been, where it is now, and where it's going. So help with their forecasting and anything that might change in the future. So the first one we did, like say last Insights, and that was relatively easy. When I say easy, it was a lot of research, but it was quite structured in its format. Not sure we can say the same at the moment, but it's an interesting barometer this time.
And what we look at is a really kind of broad range of sources for the data, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but we put, rather than members having to go out and trawl for that data themselves, we pull it all together. So what sort of organisations do we refer to?
Well, we start off with our own members' data, which we collect monthly, and we've been doing that for absolutely years. So that's the start, so we can show just overall how well we're doing in terms of growing the market. We also have the BMBI, the Plumbing and Heating Merchants Index. We've got house registrations. We've got housing trackers about house prices. We've got Bank of England figures. We've got mortgage figures, mortgage rates, unemployment rates, construction sector information. And we just bring it all together so that members can see it as an overview rather than having to, like, say, dig around for it themselves.
It's all about being able to make informed choices as a bathroom manufacturer, isn't it?
Yeah.
About how you kind of direct your business, both in the short term and arguably over the medium term when trends start to appear.
Yeah.
So tell us about the current state of I'm going to say the market, but actually we're talking about the economy at large, aren't we?
Yeah. So the year started really well, and when the member stats were coming in for January and February, we haven't quite got March yet, but that will be due soon. It was looking pretty good, and we've got a positive upturn. Just looking at the figures now, for January of plus 2% compared for 2025 compared to 2024. That's like-for-like daily rate, and we expect March's figures to be really positive as well. And that sits alongside the BMBI report that looks at the kitchen and bathroom category alongside total builders merchant sales, and we're up on. Compared to the sales across total builders merchants, the kitchen and bathroom category is outperforming sort of total builders merchant sector. We've got new home registrations with people trying to beat the
Stamp duty.
Stamp duty. That's the word I'm looking for. So they overall new home registrations were down 1% in 2024, but the private sector home registrations were up 11%. So that was a really good lift for bathroom manufacturers at the sort of higher end. And then we look at like I say the Bank of England rate, which at the time of printing is 4.5. That might change. So what we're looking at is where we've been, where we are now, and kind of the forecasting side of things. So we'll look at things like the consumer confidence barometer, which GfK brought. They've been running that for absolutely years, and sort of January was quite low, but February, March coming back up again. Not sure what's going to happen in April. Might take a massive nosedive. But those figures will be out and they'll be in the Insights publication. So, yeah, it was looking pretty positive as we entered the new year.
So we're, I suppose, conservatively bullish, I suppose, if that's not a contradiction in terms. But, I've certainly written an article for KBB Focus recently where I've been pretty upbeat about the prospects, and members are certainly reporting quite positive things to me anecdotally about the state of the market. But there's some storm clouds up there as well that we're hoping that the light will shine through. I just want to look into my other guests if we kind of put this in the international context of what's going on globally.
Yeah.
What are some of the risk factors that could create some problems for us?
Sure. Well, I mean, we're recording this at the start of April, and things are pretty crazy at the moment in terms of the global scene, mainly in the context of tariffs, the two T words, tariffs and Trump, which are causing absolute mayhem in the markets. Trump introduced 10% tariffs on the UK, as well as much higher tariffs for a lot of other countries as well. And so if you were looking at the stock markets yesterday, things were looking really, really bad. Asian markets were down, European markets were down, American markets were down. And things are looking quite bad, to be honest, as far as the global scene goes. The UK is sort of quietly confident that they might be able to carve out some kind of trade deal. So Starmer, and Peter Mandelson, the ambassador in America, have been doing a lot of schmoozing of Trump and the Trump team in desperate hopes of carving out somewhat of a trade deal. And what they'll be hoping for is that those 10% tariffs can be, if not got rid of, at least lowered a little bit. And so Trump is, Starmer, apologies, is sort of carving out a bit of a different path to people like Canada and countries like Germany as well, who are quite, they're coming out quite strong against Trump and saying that this is really bad and sort of going to war in that respect, whereas Starmer is definitely trying to keep a cool head, as he keeps saying, and desperately trying to keep relations warm enough so that they'll be able to carve out a little bit of a trade deal, which should hopefully make things easier for UK manufacturers exporting over into the US. But then again, the global scene and what happens with other countries is obviously going to have a knock-on effect with the UK as well. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. So possibly a little bit of optimism, but things are quite crazy at the minute and moving incredibly quickly. So I think it's something to keep an eye on.
I think that's the most difficult thing. And returning to the barometer, it's important to say that's a snapshot in time, isn't it?
Yeah. And at the moment, it's too early to call on what's going ahead. We can report historically and how members are doing and, where we are on sort of interest rates currently. But as we go to press, that might all change. So it will be up to date as it goes to press.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of really follow on from Jonathan in saying that I think there is reason to be quite positive. 10% tariffs, as bad as they are, aren't as bad as just our neighbours over the English Channel are suffering with 20% tariffs. I think the signals that have come out of Trump's mouth with regards to the UK have been pretty positive. I think that's reflected in what the currency markets are doing. The pound is certainly at its best position for quite some time, and that has a really positive effect for bathroom manufacturers because we are so heavily traded, if not in finished goods, in components. So that's a real upside risk for our industry. So there are reasons to think that it's not all doom and gloom, and it's that volatility that's the real struggle, and the relentless reporting of Trump tariffs, the effect that might have on consumer sentiment, which worries me. But yeah, that's the economy. Well, thank you, Jane. Great to have the barometer in the last couple of editions, and I think it is just that really great snapshot of what's going on economically that can frame decision making for bathroom manufacturers.
Yeah, I enjoy doing it. It's really interesting.
So if we have a look at what's actually going into this edition of Insights, it kind of reflects the optimism, I think, that we sort of feel. A lot of the briefings in here reflect some sort of optimism for our sector for the future. And that's largely to do with the various policies that are being introduced by the government. So on reducing environmental impacts, there are two briefings that'll appear in this section. And the first one is on the Enabling Water Smart Communities project and a case for water smart housing. So this project is really about addressing the challenges of water scarcity in new housing developments. Now, with the government's objectives for 1.5 million, reduced maybe to 1.3 is a more realistic, but perhaps a bit lower. With those housing targets, there's a real push towards enabling those houses, but we can't then shy away from the fact that there are water scarcity issues, particularly in the southeast. So this project's all about incorporating water smart strategies into housing developments, which is going to be critical for long-term water security. So within these, some of the strategies that they're hoping to implement are around perhaps water fittings, grey water recycling as well, which is going to be a huge issue. And there's a public first report that came out, and they've done a lot of the research behind it, and also on the public perception of the water challenges and the reuse of grey water. That's not quite right, using grey water. Now, Tom, you attended a round table, didn't you, about this project? It was few months ago now.
Yeah, well, actually done a couple of roundtables on enabling water smart communities, and I think the thing that really is a great breakthrough from this work, which is funded out of the Ofwat Water Efficiency Fund, is public first research, which kind of puts for the first time really an economic figure on what it's costing the country from failing to act on water efficiency and reducing domestic demand. And this really focuses on the foregone development in those really critical parts of the country in terms of economic drive. Yeah. So around Cambridgeshire, that triangle between Cambridge, Oxford, and London, where there's a huge economic opportunity, and they've put a figure in the many billions that this is costing the UK on an annual basis.
I think it was an economic loss of 25 billion, wasn't it? If water scarcity, they reckon over 61,500 planned homes might not be built due to water shortages in the southeast and east of England, and put that 25 billion economic loss on it.
Yeah, it's significant, and there is an imperative then on policymakers to act to encourage really active steps to improve water efficiency, particularly in those water scarce areas. And this is something that Inflect has been helping the BMA with.
Yeah, so we've been sort of reaching out to a lot of MPs in constituencies across sort of the east of England, in the southeast, places that are sort of significant risk of water scarcity. And basically showing them the evidence that's available, some research that we worked on, as well as this report as well, which came out, which was incredibly helpful because it all fits in with that sort of that government growth agenda. So growth is now at the forefront of what the government is trying to do. The Chancellor came out in the new year, and since January, everything has been growth, and everything that the government does is to sort of fulfil this one big goal, because they know that if they can get the economy growing again by the end of the Parliament, that'll be great. And if they don't get it growing again by the end of the Parliament, they're not going to win the election. Basically, they've hung everything on this. And it aligns as well with sort of the Oxford Growth Corridor. I don't know if you've heard about this, but essentially the government's trying to create a sort of Silicon Valley in the around Oxford and Cambridgeshire, which is going to bring in investment, AI. They're really trying to capitalise on artificial intelligence and make that the cornerstone of their policy to boost economic growth and bring good jobs. Obviously, all those tech pros and AI bots will all need houses, and it's in a particular region of the country that's kind of just going to be struggling with water scarcity, which this report highlights. And so there's a lot that the government has to do there to make sure that those houses can get built, because if those houses don't get built, those workers don't have anywhere to live, and the whole idea of this tech-enabled AI powerhouse kind of falls down. And so it's something that government will be really, really focusing on, and something they really need to make a success out of. So there's a particular opportunity here for bathroom manufacturers with innovative innovations, water efficient technologies, grey water, recycling systems, and go to the government and say, look, you're not going to get these houses built if you don't implement some of these these technologies, purely due to the fact that there isn't the water in there at the moment to sustain that kind of development.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things from the Public First report was the research that they'd done around public perceptions of recycled water. And on the whole, the public were quite willing to accept that. They'll use recycled water to flush the loos or use outside in the garden. But there was an absolute kind of breaks off on the potential of reusing toilet water, even though it had been, properly cleaned and recycled and was fine to use. They would not use toilet water for drinking. So yeah, certainly recycled water for other things, but not for drinking.
And certainly recycling showers is something that we're really pushing for, just to open up the market. When you think about it, it's no different from sitting in your bathwater.
No, it's a bonkers thing that we don't have recirculating showers.
So we're working with policy makers to try and make that happen. But what are some of the other policy implications and recommendations of the enabling Water Smart Communities project?
Okay, so some of the policy implications are going to be looking at incentivising water-saving technologies. So that will require financial incentives for developers and homeowners to install water-efficient appliances and systems. You know, some of these can be quite low cost. I mean, regulators on water-efficient showers, they're not expensive. So, you know, there are reasonable, cost-efficient ways to introduce this. Insofar as government, there must be public awareness campaigns to address those misconceptions around grey water and recycled water. Then we'll need regulatory support for water smart development. So that'll be in regards to building regs and to make sure that water efficiency standards are mandated in new developments. And then, of course, cross-sector collaboration. We'll need partnerships between government agencies and water companies and the bathroom manufacturing sector. Our members are willing and ready. It just needs that collaboration.
Well, as you say, willing and ready, and innovation around water efficient technologies is really coming at pace now. You know, the biggest issue that we've faced in recent years is around leaky loos, and there's some great solutions coming forward which deal specifically with that issue. You know, showering as an experience isn't something that consumers want to compromise on, but there's some really cool stuff coming forward, and we mentioned recirculating showers that kind of creates the best of both worlds. So there's some huge opportunities in here for bathroom manufacturers if we see it over the line. So sticking with water, Lisa, tell us about something going on over the channel. Obviously, many of our members trade in both the UK and the EU. Many of them are indeed European companies. Tell us about the European Water Resilience Strategy. Okay,
so this was an initiative launched by the European Union, and it's to address water-related challenges that we see here in the UK. It's not just for the UK. So the idea behind it is to promote efficiency, sustainability, and innovation, based around the security and resilience of the water sector. So, I mean, as with the UK, it's all driven by global challenges, increased population, climate change, those sorts of things. It's due to be published in the second quarter of 2025. No date, but second quarter. And it's an agenda to address future water challenges. So there are three main core objectives. Now, these are very similar to the UK's Plan for Water, which we've discussed in the Insights publication on numerous occasions. So the main objectives are restoring and protecting the water cycle, ensuring clean and affordable water and sanitation, and promote a competitive EU water industry. And those three objectives are underpinned by 5 key action areas around governance and implementation, infrastructure, finance and investment, security, and industry innovation and education. So it's all about resilience for their water sector. It's very similar to the UK's Plan for Water, and it's a broad, aligned kind of vision. So the main difference I've been able to sort of dig out between the two policies is there's not that much difference. That weirdly, I think weirdly, the UK's approach is slightly stricter in terms of where the polluters are penalised. Now, I've not seen any kind of reference to polluters in the EU being penalised, whereas for the UK, that is the way.
Do you think that's because of the particular issue that we're facing around water company performance and sewage?
Yeah, it could well be. The public want to see action on this, so I presume this is why we're now seeing a polluter is paying.
I think Starmer made that quite a focus of the Labour campaign towards the end of last year or the middle of last year as well. Was that preventing pollution in the UK's bathing waters and going after water companies and making them pay for the pollution that they put in. So that's an interesting aspect, I think, of why the UK might be a bit more focused on this than throughout the rest of the EU. It's such a salient issue, isn't it?
Politically, it's a really savvy move. morally, somebody had to take the reins, really. But there's a European Commission call for evidence around this, which included businesses, policymakers and the public. So the European Commission are now emphasising a water efficiency first principle. So this is going to have some impacts for manufacturers. So there could be implications around water efficiency standards within the EU, which could mean stricter regulations on water consumption, which could then drive through into manufacturers' use of water efficient technologies, which obviously is great for our sector. And there should be an increased focus then on water recycling and grey water reuse systems within homes and businesses. It feeds through to new opportunities for innovation, so expansion of smart water technology markets, sensor-based taps, water-saving fixtures. And there should be a growth in eco-certifications and sustainability labelling, making water-efficient products more marketable. Don't know. I mean, the UK is going to be introducing a mandatory water efficiency labelling system. We believe that it will be a government-led scheme so far. So there may be 2 different labelling systems here, but we await further information on that, really.
And in certainly CEIR, which is our European Association, submitted a response to the call for evidence from the European institutions. One of the things that they talked about was the unified water label and going for a self-regulatory measure, a basic water labelling on a voluntary basis across Europe. What BMA will work to do is try and ensure maximum alignment between those 2 systems.
Yeah.
However, the policymakers wish to proceed, whether it's self-regulatory, utilising the unified water label, or doing a standalone government-run initiative. We just need to make sure that there's maximum alignment.
That's right. It will create issues for manufacturers. There could be confusion in the market of 2 different labels. There are other potential impacts on bathroom manufacturers from the European Water Resilience Strategy. There could be some higher compliance costs for manufacturers, depending on if new efficiency benchmarks for bathroom fixtures are brought in. There may be new compliance costs. So, I mean, manufacturers really need to be looking at investing in water-saving technologies, looking at compliance and certification, making sure that these are all in order, and then strengthen consumer awareness and marketing, so educating consumers on the benefits of the water-saving bathroom products, which many of our members, they do. There's not a great deal more that they can do in that sphere. So I think for bathroom manufacturers operating in Europe, there'll be new challenges, but then also great opportunities under this strategy. And we'll await for further information from the European Commission in Q2 of 2025.
I think the key takeaway that I've taken from this briefing, Lisa, is that there's pretty good alignment.
Yeah.
Between the Plan for Water and the European Water Resilience Strategy.
Yeah.
We're kind of all heading in the same and right direction.
Yeah. There's absolutely that realisation that water scarcity is a real issue.
So should we take a break before we move on to the next section?
Yes, why don't we?
During the break, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the BMA Connect conference, which is taking place on the 16th and 17th of September at the Grand Hotel in Birmingham. Really beautiful, prestigious venue. On day 1 of the event, which is the Tuesday, we are going to be holding our Insights Live event for members. This is free to attend, and it contains all of the technical, marketing and special interest groups which you've come to expect from the association. In the evening, there is a networking dinner, which is a paid-for function, and then we move into day 2 on the Wednesday. That's our big Connect event, which contains really thought-provoking keynote speakers with the theme Connecting the Dots, and that theme will become all the more resonant as you hear some announcements from the BMA over the next couple of months. In the evening at that event, we'll have a gala dinner raising money for Macmillan, but also celebrating our sustainability awards winners and this year's 30 under 30. So I really hope you can join us for the BMA Connect conference. You can find out more details, the costs involved, and you can book through our website. Just head to the events page at www.bathroom-association.org.uk.
Right then, so our Raising Standards section in this publication, we are looking at the Construction Products Reform Green Paper, which I know has taken up a lot of time for a lot of people. So this green paper is developed in response to the issues that were raised following the Grenfell Tower tragedy. And the inquiries that followed the Grenfell Tower, they've really exposed the huge deficiencies within the construction industry's regulatory framework. So comprehensive reform, and it's been widely accepted through government that this absolutely has to happen. Nobody will want to see a tragedy like this ever again. So, Tom, I know that you've been working on this green paper a lot over the last few weeks. And so whereabouts are you on your thoughts on the green paper? And
yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, this is a really big one for BMA. About half of our product categories are construction products under the current definition of construction products covered by the CPR, which was a set of regulations which were adopted into UK law, inherited basically from our time within the European Union. So this is a European rule set. These basically govern the product standards which are expected of various different construction products. So the ones that are covered currently by the CPR are shower enclosures, shower trays, basins, sanitary ware. Taps and showers aren't currently covered as a construction product. What the green paper does is move away from the definition which was worked up by the last government of safety critical products. So this was a concept which, in the immediate wake of the tragedy at Grenfell, the last government kind of developed this idea that we're going to set a special regulatory framework around safety critical products. What the current green paper does for construction products regulation is actually broaden the scope. So there is a debate now on whether taps and showers could fall within it. It's not quite clear yet. And this is forming part of our consultation response. Actually there is a need to avoid double regulation because that's caused our industry problems in the past. WCs, for instance, are double regulated by both water supply, water fittings regulations 1999 and the CPR. So what we need to make sure is that through all of this process of reform, we don't end up with an even greater mess of double regulations and regulations conflicting with one another. So that's a key part of the BMA's input that we're just developing right now. The regulatory requirements, the top line from this is there is a willingness from the government to align with the European approach to construction products regulation. The EU CPR is itself undergoing reform to increase the traceability of products. There's something called digital product passports, which are being developed, which will create the golden thread which Judith Hackett in her report in the aftermath of Grenfell said was so important for the exchange of product information. Digital product passports are a key tool to delivering that golden thread. So actually there's alignment between what the UK government want to achieve after analysing Sir Martin Morbick's report on everything that went wrong. There's actually an alignment between their objectives and what the European Union is trying to do in any case. So there's pretty good alignment in, and that's not to say that the UK is just going to cut and paste the European construction products regulation, but they're talking about adopting a similar approach to definition of construction products, of adopting a similar pathways to product compliance, of allowing continued recognition of the CE mark within the UK. So I think broadly that's pretty welcomed by construction product manufacturers, and especially welcomed by bathroom manufacturers. But this is, I hasten to add, still a green paper. It's a consultation document. This is not the definite direction that is being taken, and the government are going to take into consideration all the different feedback which they get in this three-month period. What I will say is we participated in a webinar with Alex Norris, who's the minister responsible for this. They do seem to be genuinely listening to some of the concerns that exist within industry. But actually, there's a lot to be positive about in this. It's aligned to the wider marketplace that we exist in, which is the EU 27 plus UK. I think we all recognise that there is a need to ensure our buildings are safe, and that as suppliers to the construction industry, we have an absolutely integral role in that. I mean, product compliance has been a key cornerstone of the BMA's activity, and one of our strategic priorities, indeed a section within the Insights publication, is called Raising Standards, and that is what the government is trying to do in this green paper. So we're really pleased to be contributing to it. The CPA is doing an excellent job of contributing to it and building a really strong relationship with ministers like Alex Norris. So, we will make sure bathroom manufacturers' views are heard.
Yeah. The webinar with Alex Norris, it was actually really rather encouraging. He was questioned by the CPA around any divergence, and there's an absolute recognition that must be avoided as much as possible. So I think that's actually really rather encouraging. And there are focus areas, aren't there, within the green paper that should provide some optimism around. It is about that product information and marketing. I think you're right that the digital traceability for products is going to be absolutely key, and the role of Code for Construction product information will come into play.
Yeah, this is abbreviated to CCPI, the Code for Construction Product Information. But this is a great way for manufacturers to. You can either do it just by following the code or by seeking an accreditation from CCPI that you do comply with that code. But it's a great way for your company to say, we deliver pucker information, we communicate in the proper way, it's all underpinned by the proper testing. I'd really encourage bathroom manufacturers to look at CCPI. It was recognised within the green paper as well, as a kind of good way to ensure that you're doing things properly.
Yeah, so that whole transparency builds trust.
I think the one thing that I really should say about this as well is the potential broadened scope of what is a construction product. So currently it's everything that has a designated standard within the construction products regulation. So all of those categories which I talked to before. Actually, this broadens it to potentially products that go into a building that don't have a designated standard right now. That could include some of the other plumbing fixtures and fittings which are manufactured by BMA members. There is this general safety requirement that's contained within the green paper, which the government are thinking of introducing. Obviously, our members already have to comply with the general product safety requirements. So, I don't think that's anything that's going to cause manufacturers much fear. What we do need to ensure, returning to my point at the top of this briefing, was that there is no kind of conflict, that the overlaps are coordinated between this new emerging regulation and other regulation that already exists on the statute book around particularly water fittings.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to our next briefing. So this is building the skills to build the future. Okay, so housing crisis. How many decades have we been discussing a housing crisis? But the Labour government, as you said, Jonathan, I mean, it's growth, and house building is a major underpin of that growth. There's a recognition that skills is going to be the key. There are many voices that say the house building targets are all fine and dandy. There are many obstacles to overcome those house building targets, one of which is going to be the severe construction skills shortage. So the government have built a strategy around this, overhauling how apprenticeships and technical education will be delivered. And the Chancellor Spring's statement, there was more cash thrown at all of this. But what this particular briefing in the Insights does is to unpack two strands, which is the replacement of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. Can we call it IFAT or IFATE? So they'll be replaced with Skills England. And also the apprenticeship levy will now be changed into the growth skills levy. So there's a couple of things that people need to be aware of here. So Skills England will actually have a broader mandate than the IFATE organisation did. IFATE is going to be abolished, and all of its statutory functions will be now transferred to the Secretary of State to Skills England. It's a new executive agency within the Department for Education. So it was formed, launched in a shadow form in July 2024, fully operational by mid-2025. And it'll identify the skills gaps within the labour market, but it'll also work with the Industrial Strategy Council and the Migration Advisory Committee to then determine where the skills that are needed and how we'll actually deliver that. And then if we just turn briefly to the fact that the apprenticeship levy will now be turned into the growth skills levy, because they're two central parts of this piece of the skills building for the construction sector. So the growth and skills levy was underpinned by a £40 million boost from the government. The difference between the apprenticeship levy and the growth skills levy is that under the growth skills levy, employers can use 50% of their contributions, and that doesn't have to be for just apprenticeship. So it can be for non-apprenticeship training, which opens up a whole world of different flexibility for organisations. So employers are going to be able to train people in new skills that meets their needs. That they can recruit and support apprentices for high-demand trades. They're also lowering the entry requirements. Now, forgive me, I may be wrong in this, but I think they're reducing the maths and English level slightly so that you don't need a maths O level to be able to get an apprenticeship.
Showing your age there, Lisa. Maths O level.
That's true. It isn't an O level anymore.
GCSE.
Thank you. Everyone now knows I'm of that age.
Well.
But I think this is a good thing for employers. It will widen their ability to be able to train people that they need for their sector. So that's a bit of a background to these two little changes. But then this all relates to skills in construction. So a third of construction workers are aged over 50. We're entering that cliff edge of not having the skills that we need in this country to build the 1.3, 1.5 million homes that the government has targeted. But then to address it, there are huge chunks of cash now available. I just wanted to run through a few of them. So there's 625 million invested to train 60,000 skilled construction workers, 10 technical excellence colleges to focus on key trades, a new construction skills mission board to guide the strategy, 100 million for 35,500 construction skills boot camps, 40 million for 10,000 new construction foundation apprenticeships. And then employees will also receive a £2,000 reduction per trained foundation apprentice. So these are real strong underpinning strategies to enable us to get to this, house building target. I feel really positive about it. For decades of not addressing the housing crisis, this feels like it may actually be a government that's looking at all of the pieces fitting together.
I'm going to take a different view on this, Lisa. I mean, all really encouraging stuff in terms of the announcements, but I get the feeling that it's still quite superficial. I mean, the issue that we're facing in construction and kind of bathrooms is a great example of this. Is just the level of fragmentation that exists within the trades. You don't have, in the way that you do in automotive, in retail, big, large employers that can take on trainees and apprentices at scale. We have this culture of subbing out, and lots and lots and lots of very small businesses that don't have either the management capacity or, frankly, the will to take on a large number of apprentices, train them up, lose them to become their local competition. And whilst all of these measures are really, really fantastic, doesn't get to grip with that structural problem that we face within the construction trades. And until in our pre-election manifesto to the different parties, we called for an independent review of apprenticeship training within fragmented sectors, not just the bathroom industry, all fragmented sectors, and there are others out there. Until we've had that real proper diagnosis, how on earth are we going to solve the issues, no matter how much money you throw at it? So I really, really applaud the ambition and the political will to try and do something about it, but I just don't think that these measures are going to have the effect that we need them to.
That's quite depressing, Tom.
I mean, Jonathan, you're closer to the political action than any of us.
Yeah.
What's your view?
Well, I mean, the Skills England, they've now put together an exec team. So they've got chief exec and directors, and that was announced sometime last month. What we haven't had yet from Skills England is something that you were alluding to, Tom, is something that tells us exactly how it's going to work and how these functions are going to be carried out. They introduced an initial report when they shortly after they were established, but we're yet to get down to the nuts and bolts of exactly how they're going to address a lot of these issues, like the ones that you mentioned that are quite unique to different trades and different sectors. And I think there is a bit of an issue as well at the same time of haven't we seen this before? What is the average lifespan of one of these skills agencies that gets set up?
Absolutely.
Will it last the length of the Parliament?
Oh, Jonathan, you're making a really good point.
It sounds very sceptical and cynical, I suppose. But it does make me think, what's different about this one exactly? And also the fact that it's not quite up and running yet. The government were elected, we're getting on for a year now, and it was a plan that they had before that, as well as was to get Skills England established. It was something they'd announced prior to the election. You'd think it was something they'd thought about and have ready to go and put into place. But things are taking a little bit longer than expected, I think. And the election's coming up by 2029. Takes a while to train people as well. And you've got 1.5 million homes to build, or 1.3, Lisa, if we go off your metrics. It seems like a bit of an uphill battle. And I don't mean to sound skeptical, because I love the idea of Skills England. I've got a skills policy background myself, working on adult skills at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. And I really, really hope Skills England does work. And the funding that we've seen is really promising, 600 million. That's huge for 60,000 new construction workers. But I think it remains to be seen. And I think we need to pick up the pace, possibly.
So we've got.
I think there's another side to it that is particularly difficult for the bathroom industry. Is that a bathroom is a really complicated room to fit, and so people come in and then they realise they can actually get as much money fitting a boiler, and which is much easier. And then they go to a bigger organisation like the two big boiler companies that I won't mention in the podcast. There are other boiler companies available.
And sponsorship slots available as well.
Slots available. So if you want to make your life complicated, be a bathroom fitter.
But also an amazing profession to get into, transforming people's homes, right?
And if you have that mentality that you want to, slightly do a bit of electrics, a bit of tiling, a bit of plumbing, bathrooms are great. But if that's a difficult one within the apprenticeship scheme to cover all that off, when actually you can have a much easier apprenticeship.
So after being really positive,
I feel
Lisa,
totally deflated now. Thanks, guys.
Shall we cheer you up and move on to new towns?
I'm still remaining positive. Yes. Moving on to building new towns for the future. So this is another. I feel like we're talking a lot about housing in this edition. So yes, the 1.5 million new homes target, which the Chancellor did admit that it was going to be more like 1.3. So I'm kind of going with my 1.3 million. I mean, building new towns for the future. Policy paper published by Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and it's establishing a framework for creating the next generation of new towns, all underpinning the government's house building targets. The New Towns Task Force, which is an independent expert advisory panel, was established in September 2024, and it's responsible for making recommendations on the location and the delivery of the new towns. So the sites for the first new towns should be recommended summer of this year, with construction on up to 12 of the new developments to be underway by the next election. So still some time away yet. A lot of these new towns probably won't be new towns. There'll be extensions of existing towns. So it's not essentially new towns. But the objectives behind it, it's, again, we're going back to the unlocking economic growth, accelerating housing delivery, building strong communities, and promoting environmental sustainability. Has anybody any thoughts on where, before I get really positive, would you like to all...
Well, I'm going to pick out something from the briefing, which I've had advanced sight of, and I really love your infographic on the opportunities and considerations.
Thank you.
So can you talk us through that, just to put that in an audio format for listeners?
Right, yes. There are huge opportunities here. If this strategy comes to fruition, and there are the huge opportunities for bathroom manufacturers, each new home is going to need a new bathroom. If we're going down the 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom ratio, this is even a greater opportunity. So if house builders do adopt a sort of every 1 bedroom has a bathroom, that will be even better for us. There'll be a heightened demand for water-efficient fixtures and fittings, low-flow toilets, water-saving taps, because we've sort of alluded to the fact that new builds must also address water-efficient technologies as well. There'll be an opportunity for innovation and collaboration, manufacturers to design and supply products to meet the specifics of new sustainable communities. On the consideration side for manufacturers, there may be some regulatory compliance issues. There may be more sustainability and efficiency standards set out in the policies that manufacturers will need to adhere to. Assuming we see this absolute boon in the need for bathroom fixtures and fittings, then manufacturers are going to have to look at scaling up production to meet the increased demand. I mean, this is my golden, target, that it's all going to increase. But then there's going to be market competition, and manufacturers will need to differentiate the products by emphasising the innovation, quality, sustainability aspects of them. If we start picking apart the implications of a new town strategy, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill was actually introduced in introduced in March 2025. So that aims to address some of the long-standing issues around halts in planning making decisions. It's whether is there a trade-off sometimes with rushing through planning decisions to meet the housing targets for the sake of potentially mitigating not meeting the sustainability requirements that perhaps we should. That's my only slight unease with it. I mean, I don't know if with your political will, you've seen anything, Jonathan.
I think there have been examples, I think, already of Environment Agency concerns and blockers being removed by government, and I think this all points to the another pillar of how the government is thinking they're going to grow the economy, which is by deregulation and sort of that deregulation for growth. And so it's getting rid of the blockers. Anybody who's against house building, blocker, NIMBY, and Labour's direction, particularly Angela Rayner's direction, the Deputy Prime Minister, is to break through the blockers because they think that's the way that they're going to get the economy growing. And so the regulators in some instances, people like agencies like the Environment Agency are causing a little bit of a blocker on new development. Labour, through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill as well, are not afraid to sort of ride roughshod over local councils, and we're looking at the abolition of district councils as part of the local government reorganisation, merging them into sort of more bigger units, strategic authorities, which are going to have things to do over spatial development strategies, male development corporations. So we're seeing a massive push for Labour through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill to sort of, I don't want to say stifle local opposition, but if you're being cynical, that's what you would say. And then also breaking through the blockers as well. Is there the risk that by doing this, you do leave the country exposed to some risks around building on development, which isn't necessarily safe to build on, or doesn't meet the same standards that you would meet otherwise? I think, interestingly enough, in light of the tariffs as well, it's the government's will to go for economic growth and pull back on some of their things that they held dearly in terms of, I'm thinking specifically in terms of green policies.
Yeah.
So when the government came in, one of their biggest things was their green agenda and getting the country to carbon neutral. Obviously, Trump's tariffs came in, the car industry took a massive financial hit. What goes out the window when that happens? The government cut back on the green restrictions on the car industry. And so we have seen from the government already a willingness to break down some of those regulatory barriers that they put in place in order for to enhance sustainability and green growth and things like this, in order to get the economy moving and the economy growing again. So that is a battle that I think we're going to see play out a lot more. We've seen the sort of starting gun fired over the past few weeks, and I'm sure the Ed Miliband, the climate change secretary, is going to be watching that one very closely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to accentuate the positives first of all. I think this is a really encouraging set of policies. I think back to the interview I did with George Clark at Install the Show a couple of years ago, where he talked about just how great the new towns were. He grew up in a new town in the northeast, and just the way that the community was designed. It made it a great place to live, and I'm feeling quite encouraged. This was actually something Dominic Cummings was really keen on, basically new greenfield and brownfield development, rather than kind of going down the retrofit route of pushing towards kind of newer homes. It was something that he was very keen on. So hopefully we might be even looking towards a cross-party consensus that this is a great way to push forward housing development. On the downside, it still doesn't solve that issue of skills.
No.
It still doesn't, solve the issue of water efficiency, water scarcity that we talked about, and all the other infrastructure issues that come alongside development. So, am I 100% convinced that this is going to be the panacea that we hope it will be? Absolutely not. But I'm pretty encouraged by it. Jane, I know you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, actually, because when we look at sort of housing, when they're throwing up new blocks of housing, they generally all seem to look the same. Has there been any sort of work done on moving forward on architecture for these new towns to make like a step forward? Because we've had the same kind of houses for however many years, 100 years, and they're maybe not the best way to live at the moment, you know, as we move into sort of multi-generational households and, you know, people having to live at home for longer because they can't afford new housing. I mean, maybe that will change when there's more housing. But has there been any sort of work done on the way that we actually live in our homes now for these new towns?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And actually, when this policy was announced, Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer visited one of the King's new towns in Cornwall, which is a real kind of beacon as far as community goes and interesting architecture within a new town. So I think it's something that ministers are cognizant of. What they haven't answered is the fact that actually you get more interesting and more different properties built typically by the smaller house builders, but construction in our country is dominated by relatively few very, very large house builders. Unless we can address that balance, and you know, it's also important to say that the last time we were anywhere near the house building target that the government's talked about, it was when the structure of the house building industry was very different, and you had a much larger number of smaller house builders operating around the country, and you had those house builders being funded by public projects. You know, we need to be thinking about the structure of the industry in order to, you know, build out new towns, have interesting developments, are beautiful, great places to live.
Architecture forward.
And also actually just to address the economy of house building. You know, such consolidation in a few companies it isn't going to get us to where we need to be.
No. And will these houses actually be affordable? Well, with the state of the economy, things are changing so quickly. Are mortgage rates suddenly going to start rising? Will that then dampen down housing demand? There are so many different facets to this that.
But let's be positive. For bathroom manufacturers, every one of these properties is going to need several bathrooms, we hope. So great market opportunity. So Jane, as well as being our economic guru, you also look after our proprietary research. And one of the big projects over the last year has been trying to understand what goes on in the minds of builders merchants when they make their purchasing decisions in terms of bathrooms. Tell us a little bit about that project, because that's summarised in this edition of Insights as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we've been running this for, feels like an awful long time. And it's part of a series of research projects that started off talking to the consumer about how they purchased a bathroom and who influenced them. And that led us to interview lots of installers because they were seen to be as the main influence on the end user. And then when we asked the installer who influenced them, it was the merchant. So we went to talk to a lot of merchants. So we talked to merchants employed by the big national merchants, by the large independent merchants, and down to the small independent local merchants, or one-man bands. And we got some great feedback. And alongside a sort of general survey, online survey, we did some in-depth interviews because we realised it was quite a complicated sort of sector to understand, and there's lots of different views and opinions and characters and big companies versus small companies. So it was really difficult to sort of segment it all out. So what we did was pick out 4 subjects from the online survey and do some in-depth interviews, is the word I'm looking for, with people across different levels within the merchants. And the 3 bits that we pulled out were about e-commerce competition being a big barrier to, well, the biggest barrier to more sales of bathroom products, and what the merchants are doing about that. We also talked about how merchants will what enables them to confidently sell a newly launched bathroom product, because installers are notoriously welded to a set of products that they know and trust. So if a bathroom manufacturer wants to bring out a new product, how do they actually get that to market and get it through past the merchant, past the installer, and actually in a home? So we looked at what actually builds trust in a new product. And that comes back to what we talked about slightly earlier, about being transparent about the provenance of a product and where it's manufactured, how it gets to market, and also about pricing policies around this. You know, if a merchant is going to say, yes, okay, we'll get behind that product, they don't want to see it online or in a DIY, massively reduced. So it's all about pricing structures and being sort of safeguarding the merchant's position. They're very keen on their position within the market, and they don't want to be undermined. But for manufacturers, it's very good to understand how to get on the side of the merchant, because that is the biggest sector for our manufacturers. Water efficient products. This always comes out when we talk to installers and merchants, that they say they never get asked for water efficient products. And we wanted to understand, was there any interest coming through, and where was that interest? And what they were saying was, yes, there's a lot of water efficient products, but we are not getting asked for them. So there's a gap somewhere between, there's a lag in demand, shall we say. The manufacturers are providing all the products, but there are pockets of interest with new house builders and with eco-conscious customers. But generally, there's a lag there that needs to, they're saying this should be more education, and there just seems to be that the general public doesn't fully understand the water scarcity issues. And then the last thing we talked about was a marketing tool which merchants absolutely love and our manufacturers hate, and that's the printed product brochure. And we got some great comments going, I love a brochure, me. I'm never going to get rid of a brochure. And we give them to everyone. But there was an acknowledgement that actually yes, it was a marketing tool that they absolutely love and don't want to get rid of. And it would mean that the smaller merchants will struggle because they can't show the big ranges. But equally, they do understand that digitisation is on its way and they can't forever hide behind a brochure. And all they ask for is that it's easy to understand, easy to download, easy to access. But they are waiting with intrepidation for what takes place of the printed product brochure.
I love a brochure as well.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just age. Yeah. I'm not sure. But I do love a brochure. I will go online as well, though.
Will you buy the product because of the brochure?
Don't know. Sometimes it isn't. I mean, I get a lot of bits and bobs through the post, which still surprises me. I haven't signed up for these things. It's usually clothing things, to be fair. But I get a lot of these sorts of things through the post, and I do like them. It's nice to just leaf through. But then I'd probably go online then.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a gateway.
If you look at the two sides of the argument, is that merchants are desperate to get people into their showrooms rather than push them online, because online is seen as the sort of barrier to sales through the showrooms. So if they push people more online by online digitized brochures, that is where they're worried. But we've talked about this before, Tom, that there has to be a more forward way of looking at retailing. And the more forward-looking merchants have got two offers. They've got a cheaper online offer, which is very price focused. It's dropship. They don't necessarily keep stock, and then they have a really good showroom, and they use the website to sell cheaper products, but also drive people to their showroom, where they offer a great service of design, support, recommendations, all of that. So they see it as two completely separate entities that they can tap into, but they don't really want the online brochure to muddy those two areas. So you can see the reasons why.
I think it's a really fascinating set of insights, and members can get hold of this via the members area of the website. There is going to be a summary in the insights publication.
Yes, and we're doing a webinar.
So watch this space for more details. There was one point that I wanted to raise with you from the insights around the pricing point, because I think that is very much that's what merchants have said, but that's what they're basically asking manufacturers to do there isn't possible under the law because of retail price maintenance rules. So, that's important to say that, we would encourage our members to always comply with the letter of the law in terms of pricing.
Yeah, it's about supporting the merchants in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And possibly having two different ranges.
Jane, as I said, fascinating insights. Thanks so much. We're going to finish off the main part of the podcast with something new for this edition. So in past editions, we've had the Economic Barometer, but a first for issue 12 is the Political Barometer, courtesy of Jonathan. So, Jonathan, talk us through that.
Yeah, so we've spoken about a lot of the stuff that's been going on, but I thought it might be useful just to give a little bit of an overview of where we are at the moment, how we got here since sort of the new year and December time. Talk about some of the key policy announcements from government. We have touched on a few of them already, and then a little bit of a future direction for where things are going. So the Chancellor obviously came out at the start of the year, and there was a big renewed focus on growth. So it was all about there was a sort of bit of a lack of consumer confidence. The public started to get a little bit wary that things weren't moving possibly as quickly as they would have liked it to. And so the Chancellor came out in January saying growth. This is the new pillar of the government. It's all about boosting the economy, making us giving the UK the highest sustained growth in the G7. That was their aim. And then also increasing real disposable incomes as well is another key aim of the government. So that was what they wanted to do. And they were going to do this through three key things, really. They were going to do house building is a massive one for them. So that's a really good, a big way that the government sees of boosting the economy. There was also deregulation, which we've touched on as well, stripping back on the regulators and letting private businesses go for growth. And the final one was digitization as well. So that's modernising and digitising the economy. The government are doing that most obviously through the civil service at the moment and bringing in AI, artificial intelligence, to enhance the productivity of the public sector, which they hope will crowd in more investment and turn the UK into, which is already a fairly large tech hub in the world, and to expand on that as well. It was also around January time that Labour started to dip in the polls. So we saw Reform surge in the polls. They actually overtook Labour in February for several weeks. Then Starmer had his meeting with Trump, and there was do you remember the Trump-Zelensky fight that was going on? By all accounts, by the paper's accounts, Starmer did very well out of that, and Labour saw a slight uptick in support, and they overtook Reform again, becoming the leading party in the polls, but not for very long. Nothing lasts too long, does it? So Starmer has begun to sink again, and Labour are facing the prospect of being second in the polls to Reform. And this is all in the view of the context of the May elections that are coming up. So we've got the May local elections, where we're going to see 2 elections for new mayors. So think like your Andy Burnhams in Greater Manchester, Tracy Brabin in West Yorkshire. We've got 2 new mayors, one in Hull and East Riding and one in Greater Lincolnshire. Labour would be hoping that they can win them, but it's looking fairly likely that Reform might pick up those 2 mayoralties. And then there are a sea of other local council elections as well. So that's what's coming up. And then this was all just compounded in the past couple of weeks or last week by the announcement of the tariffs and the one-man brigade of Trump, who has unilaterally started somewhat of a trade war between America and the rest of the world, particularly with China. That seems to be heating up quite a lot. So the government has to Starmer has to deal with that, and his ministers have to deal with that. And then at the same time, there is the war in Ukraine, which is heating up. And in terms of defence spending, the government has increased defence spending. They've got to find more money to put in their defence budget. They're hoping to get to 3% of GDP on defence spending in the next parliament. Obviously, you have to find that money from somewhere. So who would want to be the Prime Minister or the Chancellor in the current climate? Definitely not me. But it might be useful just to go through a little bit more about the policy specifics that we had been talking about. So house building was one of the main pillars that they were hoping is going to keep the economy moving. There's the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which we've mentioned, and that's all about making planning easier and allowing developers to get planning permission much more easily to build large developments, which will hopefully reduce delays, therefore reducing costs, and making allowing homes to be built much more quickly. So that is one to look out for. The planning and infrastructure bills going through Parliament at the moment. We'll keep an eye out for any particular updates on that will be relevant to members, and flag that when they happen. There's also the spring statement as well that happened in March, which there was some funding announced for affordable housing. So there was £2 billion announced in the spring statement for affordable housing. The spring statement was originally never meant to be a policy statement. Back in the last autumn budget, the Chancellor said that she was going to move to one major fiscal event per year. So the spring statement was just meant to be a formality. She was supposed to read out the OBR forecast and that would be it. But obviously things started changing quite quickly and the government were forced into a bit of action. So there was a few policy announcements in there as well, the house building announcement and the construction skills announcement, that's 600 million for construction skills. And then we've also had the announcement of the new towns, which is going to be 12 sites with spades in the ground by the time of the next election. We've obviously already discussed that. And a big one, which I suppose we haven't mentioned, is the reservoirs. So 7.9 billion pounds of funding was unlocked by the Chancellor for building of 9 new reservoirs across the country, particularly concentrated in the southeast, where they're hoping for a lot of development. So all of that is to look out for on house building, and obviously all of those new homes on new bathrooms. And I didn't know the going rate was 1 bathroom per new bedroom, but that's quite good.
That's what we'd like to see.
It's the ideal. It's the ideal. It's the American way, isn't it?
And a downstairs loo.
We're sort of moving that way now, aren't we? Because I grew up in a 3-bedroom house, but we only had 1 bathroom.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's like everyone's got an ensuite, haven't they?
Yeah.
Jonathan, that's an amazing update. I think we probably haven't got the time to delve into it. I've got about 1 million questions, particularly around the polling piece. But I'm afraid time is against us. Leads us only really to thank our guests on this edition, Jane and Jonathan. Thank the team from Dissident, and thank you, Lisa, my able co-host.
Thanks, Tom. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.